On December 11th, 2024, Paradox released their end of chapter review for Chapter 3, covering their view on the past year of updates and DLC releases. While I had wanted to make my own Chapter 3 review, I became distracted by one of the ending comments regarding the future content for Chapter 4. They described how, while they were unable to deliver the merchant mechanics people had hoped for in the next cycle, the popularity around the request had bumped it to Chapter 5, so keep discussing what you want to see for the future. It will help us form the content of upcoming chapters. Well then, you would be forgiven for thinking this video is going to talk about a big content-based feature I'm hoping to see added. Maybe coronations, or East Asia expansions, Crusader flavor, religious reworks, etc, etc. In truth, I don't really care. You see, Paradox has already released a floor plan of their intended features path, and I do not have any priority of any feature over any other. They even came out to say that the entirety of Chapter 4 is already decided, and the next chapter, Chapter 5, is already in talk. I really don't mind, because what I want for the next chapter, and chapters of CK3, is a change to the balance of any content being made, regardless of its theme. That being, waiting events versus mechanics. The problem. Events in Crusader Kings 3 seem to be the ultimate double-edged sword of the game experience. Where they work are as a sudden narrative shift to what would be straightforward gameplay, with unexpected, strange, sometimes funny scenarios. Where they don't work is in their overabundance, seemingly core requirement to a majority of the game's mechanics. If you were to break down the experience of what you do while playing, I find a lot of the time you interact with a system, you are either waiting for a timer to complete or waiting for random events to fire, typically both combined. Legends and Plagues are waiting for their spread to complete while random events delay or expedite their progress. Schemes are waiting for their completion with events to speed up the scheme, delay and sometimes instantly finish them as successes or failures. Contracts act in a similar manner, with most being schemes, and thus waiting makes up most of the landless experience. What are activities if not starting a thematic series of events that, again, you have no control over what is offered to you as you wait for a timer to complete said event? The same hunters caught in the same bear traps. Travel, on harsh reflection, is also another form of waiting for your character to go from A to B, while events relating to travel hit you. The same ducks still saying quack. Holding courts fires random events. Tutoring a ward fires random events. Attending a tourney fires random events. The list goes on and on. Now, luckily, not everything is about waiting for timers and events. War still remains an active player-driven system, at least at the time of recording, and the ability to enter towns and castles as a landless character and choose what to spend your time on with a little more consistency is, I think, my favourite aspect of landless, at least mechanically. But hopefully you can see how this repetition of formula, the waiting and then the events, is far too familiar, and I think is part of the fatigue some players experience. I think waiting for a timer to complete while you complete more active goals is okay, but sadly the game hasn't developed as many active things to manage in comparison to adding more passive modes. Then, as you are waiting, you have to deal with events that can feel completely disconnected from your campaign. I once talked about how CK3 needed more events. I'm unsure how clear I was in that video, as it was only a tidbit, so I hope to be a little more clear here. CK3 needs more event variety, but with less event frequency. The intention, I believe, is with the event packs, that the event variety is going to continue to be improved upon, and that is a positive, but it does not address the issue of event frequency. The reason this complaint reaches the surface is because in one character's lifetime, not just a campaign, one single character's lifetime, you can encounter the same events fire into the double digits, and ultimately, I doubt the event variety will ever become large enough to ensure a player is unable to recall choices in text, especially when so many mechanics are dependent on events, as I listed how many there were earlier. So instead, we need to reduce the amount of events the players receive to make the ones they do receive even more meaningful. Overall, the more a player plays CK3 and becomes familiar with its systems, the events shift from being surprises to just processes that don't really build on your story. You don't even need to read the text because you become so in tune with knowing what buttons to click for the optimal outcome through sheer repetition. I simply refuse to believe this is Paradox's intended goal for a good narrative device. The solution is not an easy problem to tackle. Immediately, I have to reckon with the idea that different players want different things from the game, and so I'm unsure if there is a one-size-fits-all solution to tackle this imbalance towards events and waiting. That being said, I was told to advocate for the position I hold and the content I want to see, and so that is what I will try to do a little of here. Here are 3 ideas I think could work better towards the future of CK3 regarding events and waiting. Deeper mechanical complexity. While I understand the appeal of having a more straightforward, dictated experience for newer players, I believe the game now suffers from staying in that space. I hope that some DLC themes will naturally lend themselves to the idea of simple to approach but difficult to master, such as possible modular religions or expanded warfare. I hear many people cry out for trade, and should that come, I hope that trade will also involve balancing the expenses of a medieval economy instead of just some events relating to trade. Some potential mechanics may include managing religious vassals to influence ecumenical councils and change religious laws. Maybe in warfare, opening up peace deals to be less binary, with treaty designers asking for gold, asking for hostages, asking for marriage pacts. Instead of warring for titles outright, it could be easier to war and then be named heir of a title, like the Treaty of Troyes in 1420, where Henry V was named heir to France, not King of France outright. Complex treaty mechanics could be a goldmine of possibility, where just leaving everything up to an event might oversimplify things. The second is quite obvious, as I mentioned it earlier, to lower the frequency of events. I understand this is no straightforward task, considering how many systems currently rely on them popping up and pausing your gameplay. I'm looking at you, Legends of the Dead. However, I don't think it's impossible to go back and look at the time to trigger on some pop-ups, perhaps modifiable in the game settings. One thing CK3 has done really well is creating a very customizable experience, and having an option to automate down some events would be useful. For one example, when a plague happens, there's an event to tell you lost legitimacy. Then you need to pick to bring a physician or not, and choose a potential solution to prepare for the plague. This happens every time there's a plague, when you usually end up picking the same options every time. There is an optimal route to success. This is an event which, to me, would make more sense. As a plague happens, you just get a small legitimacy hit as a toast, and then you get told in a week what solution your physician has come up with based on their aptitude and personality. The player's input on this particular issue feels unnecessary. Maybe some things could be removed as events and just delegated based on who you've put in that position to solve that problem. The last change I'd advocate for is to revisit some of the systems that have abstract timers, like those in activities, and maybe make them expeditable, if that's a word, or alternatively remove them entirely. For example, let's take hunts. Starting a hunt first requires travelling to the hunt location. Alright, I chose where to travel to, that's fair. But once I arrive, I would have to wait until all the guests have come before the hunt can begin. This can take months, in some cases up to a year. It doesn't matter if there's only one guest left, if they are 3 months away, you wait for that one guest no matter what. Equally, there is no option for a solo outing, so if you want to head out into the wilds yourself, you get told nobody showed up because this activity requires other participants. After that, you wait through the random events to dictate your outcome, oftentimes losing the animal, even with an 80% success chance. Very strange. Here are some options and changes I think would improve hunts. For starters, a solo outing option. This would require more events solely about the player, but that choice to not wait on others I think would make up for it. Next up, an option to force start a hunt. If the group is waiting 3 months for a random kid in Timbuktu to arrive, we should be able to bypass this. Next up, multiplayer can be quirky at times, so I think also having an option to pause the waiting time on a hunt until all invited players have arrived at the activity would be better than having a fixed set time for the game, and then if something happens with the other player, they can't arrive in time. That doesn't feel as fair. And lastly on this, the hunt itself could benefit from having its activity length be dictated by the animal you're hunting instead of just a countdown. Hunting a small rabbit in a forest shouldn't feel like it needs the same kind of dedication of a great stag in the mountains. Imagine instead a bar at the top of the activity instead of the arbitrary fixed hunt length. As the day progresses, you and the animal move towards the end of the bar. Simply, you must reach the animal before the animal reaches the exit. If you reach the animal, you get the hunt kill part of the event. If the animal reaches the end, it escapes. From this, we have turned an arbitrary waiting timer into something that can have other mechanics interconnected with it. Your master of the hunt could dictate your party speed. The choice of animal you're hunting would dictate the animal's speed. Your hunter trait could also improve your party speed. Events would offer speed boosts or losses for you or the animal. This is all hypothetical, but with this I'm trying to show a way to cut down on staring at a numbered countdown while also making the moments we do wait feel slightly more meaningful and interactive. But okay, I think I've ranted enough. That's all I really wanted to say on this topic. My voice has now been added to the many for the kind of stuff I would want to see in future chapters. Maybe this will be lost to time, or maybe it speaks to some feelings you had about the game. I cannot say. If you were looking for a more straightforward answer on the type of content I would want to see, then my answer would be stuff like a modular religion, conclaves, and theocratic reworks. I'm much sooner team religion than team merchants. Okay, thank you very much for watching. If you liked this yap session, then please feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you all for much more normal content next time. Bye.